All right, Dave, we are here talking to brokers about waivers. We're going to talk specifically about a new process that Heartland has put in place and tell them where they can go to access that process.
Absolutely, but before we actually go into the process, I do want to say that MLS and KCRIR are not endorsing the use of waivers.
Absolutely.
We're not saying that you should use them, but what we are saying is if your agents are going to use a waiver, we want to make sure they get it right, and we want to try to get out in front of it so there's no complaints and let you know about that new process that is effective today. So starting today, there is a whole new process for submitting waivers to the MLS.
Okay, good. Before we get into the process, let's talk a little bit about waivers and what the responsible broker's responsibilities are.
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. I think first and foremost is to maybe ask why.
Okay.
Because I don't think we as brokers slow down enough to ask why. And a great example of that was recently at my office, an agent came to me to sign a waiver, and I, like most of us, was busy, and I went down to sign it, and then I stopped and just said, hey, why are we doing a waiver? And it didn't take very long for me to determine that A, a waiver wasn't needed, and B, we were about to have a violation, and then that agent was about to get a fine. That agent would have been upset. And so with just a quick 5-minute conversation, we were able to determine there was a better way to handle the situation, and we did so, and I was happy to do that. But I think also one of the things, Steve, that we have to understand is that as brokers, we have some pretty big liability with these waivers.
Absolutely.
And we don't think about that often enough. The agent just comes in and they want us to sign it, and we sign it and we move on. But there's some real license law issues, both from Missouri and Kansas Real Estate Commission, and if they get these things wrong, they can be in violation of license law and could run the risk of actually losing a real estate license. There's the code of ethics issues that are coming up that we're seeing with the abuse of waivers. And then the one that truly scares me is the fair housing violations. I don't think that we put enough thought into, are we getting dangerously close to fair housing violations with how we're processing or dealing with waivers in certain communities.
And those are all really good points. One of the other things that bothers me is as we move more and more documents around electronically, brokers are just quickly clicking through and they're approving, and it really requires a conversation. I think every time we see a temporary waiver or a permanent waiver, but the temporary are a little more of an issue, I think we need to question, is this in the client's best interest? Are we serving the client? Are we doing our jobs well?
Yeah.
So I ask you that rather than just clicking through and approving waivers, let's make sure there's a legitimate business purpose for it and it is in the client's best interest.
Yes, absolutely. We've seen a massive increase in waivers in the last few months here in Kansas City, which is what prompted us to work with staff to develop a better system for processing them, because the old system was pretty complicated. Well, not complicated. I would just, maybe antiquated would be a better word.
Yeah.
So the old system had you would get the waiver signed, and you would have to email the waiver and the contract over to MLS, and then the MLS would have to process that. Sometimes with the volume that we're seeing, that would take several days. And the new system allows you to go straight to a URL, a website, and upload that waiver and the listing agreement and enter just some basic data into the system, and allows us to process it. So more timely and much more accurate, and less hands touching it throughout the process now. And so when an agent calls here and says, hey, there's a sign in the yard at 123 Main Street and I can't find it in the MLS, we ought to very easily know whether or not that property is on a waiver for them and whether there's a violation.
Where do they find that URL?
So it's on the external link to the matrix section. The external link in the matrix is probably going to be the best place to always find that.
Good. So do you have any closing comments, anything you would like to emphasize?
Yeah, well, that waivers are changing, and that we need to try to get the broker community engaged in helping us communicate that. The agents have received emails that change is happening today, but like a lot of real estate agents, they're busy and they may not be reading their emails, so we really need the broker community to help us reach out to the agents and help us educate them about this change so they can be compliant.
Okay. And I would just close by saying we're responsible brokers for a reason. We need to take responsibility and make sure that everything we do is in the client's best interest.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Okay. Well, thank you. This is helpful.
No, thank you, Steve.